Tropical disturbance throwing heavy rain over northern Madagascar on today's Tropical Weather Bulletin. And now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical Weather Bulletin for March 3rd. So we don't have a new tropical cyclone yet, but it certainly is an increasing chance of seeing at least one in the next 5 days and maybe more. We're still code unclassified right now, and we've had 9 storms on this year so far. Well, let's first look at the Atlantic as we always do. 89 days until hurricane season begins, and we've got no areas of interest. An interesting little slightly rotating system in the central Atlantic, but rest assured it is non-tropical. Moving on to the eastern Pacific then, it's 72 days until hurricane season here, and apart from a few little ridges of cloud cover, there's very little going on in the eastern Pacific, and mostly clear skies over the main tropical areas. Well, in the western Pacific it's very quiet here as well, the Philippines enjoying clear weather, and most of Southeast Asia as a matter of fact as well, except for the deep tropical equatorial zone. Moving on to the Indian Ocean, things looking very quiet here as well. And now towards the southern hemisphere, well, we've still got that area of interest not far from Indonesia, 40% chance that we're giving it now. A very large area of cloud and thunderstorms that are very disorganized at the moment, but could band together to produce a tropical cyclone. We're now giving a 50% chance to a system that's continued towards the southwest, and it's now perched over the northern tip of Madagascar, and that's going to be the big rain producer for the next few days. Whether it forms or not, we'll take a look at the models in a moment, but the whole country really, and particularly further west, will be affected. And no areas of interest over there in the South Pacific, looking very quiet right now. A shadow of tropical cyclones that you might normally see there, big line of them, but it's just a few clouds. Well, this is the area of interest that's causing that's producing the most interest right now. It's just 62 kilometers from Ambanja, 166 from Analalaya, 358 from Mahajanga, 593 from the capital Antananarivo, and 879 from Morondava, which it could go on to affect later on in its life. It's expected to continue southwestwards and then hug the coast mainly for a good few days, all the way down towards the southern part of Madagascar. So that's what we're expecting, and we'll show that on the models soon. So here's the latest satellite imagery, and it does look like a system that's cut in two at the moment, and it's hard to see where the eventual center will be if it doesn't have one. I'm not sure if it does. I would say probably not at the moment. And there's the other system further east, much further east, getting towards the Australian, actually in the Indonesian zone at the moment. And you can see there a lot of thunderstorms, and maybe you could say a little bit that looks like a tropical cyclone towards the southwest there. So we'll have to wait and see what comes out of that. Close in on the floaters here. And once again, we're looking at the Madagascar system now, and you can see it's trolled over the land in the last few hours, just clipping the northern tip of Madagascar. I'm not sure if that's the actual center in that northern hub of clouds there, or whether it might be a little bit further south in between the two big areas of convection, but nonetheless it will be producing a lot of rainfall over that area this afternoon and this evening, and obviously beyond that as well. But clearly lots of high cloud tops waning in those last few frames. This is the Mozambique Channel. That's actually old imagery, so we'll move quickly on. There's Mauritius as well. That's once again old imagery, though unfortunately things are a little bit out of whack right now with the satellites. And there's a quick look at the Atlantic and that little system further north as well, and you can see it does have a fairly impressive view about it, but certainly not going to be a tropical cyclone. It's just teasing you guys. And once again, another quick look here at the Southeast Indian Ocean, that other system that we've given a 40% chance to. It's still difficult to see where the centre might form at the moment, but certainly a few areas of high convective cloud tops. Sea surface temperatures in the eastern Pacific are still warm in the areas that we expect early season activity, but it won't be yet, of course. In the Atlantic, the Caribbean has held on strong over the winter and is still 27 degrees in quite a few spots. The open waters of the Atlantic still pretty cool, and in the western Pacific it's also held on quite strong as well. In the Philippine Sea, a few spots there 28 degrees plus, especially in those lower latitudes. North Indian Ocean also looking decent around the coastline of southern India and in the Andaman Sea, but the rest of the region still has some catching up to do, and once again we don't expect to see anything forming there. The Mozambique Channel is red hot, and that is a big concern for this potential tropical cyclone. Temperatures pushing 32 degrees Celsius in one or two spots and still 28 to 30 near Mauritius. And in the Australian region, very warm waters in almost all of the areas except off the coast of Western Australia, which is below average and has been all season, but in the deep tropics extremely warm. Similar story there for the South Pacific. Around Fiji and Vanuatu, temperatures pushing above 30 degrees Celsius. We're just waiting to see if there's any systems that come along and take advantage of that. Compared to average, it looks like this. These are the anomalies. Orange zones show warmer than average temperatures for the time of year, and one or two blue spots there near Australia, cooler than average. Western Pacific near normal, the Atlantic very much above normal, in the deep tropics at least, and in the southwest Indian Ocean where this potential double storm system will be, it's quite a bit above average as well, around 2 degrees. Oceanic heat content in the South Pacific looks good right now. You can see extremely high amounts. I'm not sure if it's broken, but extremely high amounts there. Around Fiji and Vanuatu as well, looking good. Northern Pacific Ocean as well, still looking decent in a few spots of the Western Pacific, and even the Eastern Pacific has had one or two spots that have held on over the winter, and that can't have been said for the previous winter, because I remember it looked pretty dire. So this is the GFS computer model then, and it has to be said first of all that it is by far the most aggressive model at the moment for this system, and there it is, developing it into a mature tropical cyclone, but not until it gets quite a significant way into the Mozambique Channel. It doesn't form it for a good couple of days, 2 or 3 days there. It forms on the 5th into the 6th and then strengthens into that hurricane force system and starts to do a recurvature along the southern coast of Madagascar. Well, looking at the other system here in the southeast Indian Ocean, it takes a good while to get itself sorted, so a big question mark on whether we're seeing a circulation forming already, because it does take a while. Eventually it gets itself going, and by the 8th it becomes a mature tropical cyclone and possibly approaching hurricane force winds by the time we get to the end of that 5-day period. It doesn't move very much, it stays quite still and starts to move a little bit further towards the west towards the end of that, and quite a large system as well. Check out the rainfall then for the next 7-day period over the Madagascar region, and a fair amount of rain over Mozambique as well and inland towards Malawi, but also for Madagascar, of course, they'll be getting the most amount of rainfall, and a few spots there getting to 10 inches possibly along the northwestern coastline. That's 250 millimeters. A few spots well inland getting up to 6 inches or more. That's 150 millimeters, and even towards the capital, maybe similar amounts there as well. Southwestern Madagascar getting up to similar amounts too, but just off the coast where that storm is much stronger by then, it will be producing huge amounts of rainfall, so a slight deviation in track could bring up to 25 inches towards the coast, and that is an extraordinary amount of rain, well over 600 millimeters. Well, in the medium range, you thought the storm would be getting away with a recurve. Well, think again. It turns right back on itself. Of course it does. Back into the Mozambique Channel and becomes much larger. Doesn't get that much stronger, stays around the Category 1 range, and then starts to throw itself towards the coast of Mozambique. So it's going to be, if this model is correct, a complex situation where it gets shunted around. I imagine it's weak steering currents there, and then we'll see what happens next. In the southeast Indian Ocean, that mature system, well, it does fizzle out a bit there actually, and then another system forms much towards the east, and then the initial system gets going again. So we have two systems active there, as well as the Madagascar system towards the end of that 10-day period. Both of them look like they'll be staying out to sea, but maybe a cause for concern for the Cocos Keeling Islands perhaps, although it does look like both storms will miss. You can scan the barcode and that will take you to the Force 13 merch store, where you can take a look at all our products as well as our full season individual animations, bespoke, made for you on request. And our Still Waiting for Hone t-shirt, which is gathering dust because we've been waiting for Hone for... I'll be having a grey beard by the time Hone forms. In the Scilly range, well, all three systems, there they are, and then they start to converge towards the end. The initial system near Madagascar sweeps across the southern coast again towards the southeast, and like a curtain, all three systems get dragged down towards the extratropical zones. That's a sight to behold. All three systems becoming hurricane force. The middle one gets strongest in the end, maybe category 2 or 3, and gets quite close to Rodrigues before being pulled really unceremoniously towards the southeast. You can see that third system there towards the bottom left moving off the picture as we look at Australia for a fourth system that eventually forms. So if you've been thinking it's been quiet in the southern hemisphere, you've been right, and this may well be what really gives the southern hemisphere that kick that we usually see around the beginning of March. Well, there's that fourth system, obviously extremely long way out. GFS propels it to 943 millibars at the end of that run. That's on day 16 though, it's a very long way out. Crikey, well, on this day, March 3rd, 2005, probably one of the most grotesque looking category 1 storms I've seen. It looks pathetic. It was Cyclone Ophelia off the coast of Western Australia, moving harmlessly out to sea, and it must have been a slow news day that day because this is what we're featuring. There was nothing else active at this point, although we were just about to see the beginning of Jockway, I think it was, on this day in 2008. I may have said 2005 before, that was incorrect. 2008 that was on this day. Well, back to today, and we're waiting patiently, and you're going to have to be patient, Atlantic fans, for the first storm, Alberto. In the Eastern Pacific, it's Aletta, and in the Central Pacific, it is for very, very patient people, Hone. In the Western Pacific, our next name is Winyar, but no sign of it coming up yet. In the North Indian Ocean, our next name is Remal, and I imagine we'll be seeing that maybe in a couple of months. So just 9 storms so far, but you've seen how that could change in the next week or two. The next name in the Australian region is Megan. In the Southwest Indian Ocean, it's Filippo. And in the South Pacific, it is Pitta. That is all from today's Tropical Weather Bulletin. Hopefully we'll be back again with more updates tomorrow.